Welcome to Insights with Experts on the Metal Roofing Academy, your source for metal roofing attachment education, hints, and how-tos. Snow loads on metal roofs can be unpredictable and hazardous. The low friction associated with this type of roofing material can result in avalanches of snow suddenly falling to the ground. This spells trouble for whatever is waiting below, to say the least. So how do you protect your property from dangerous snow slides coming off an exposed fastened roof? How do you determine what products to use and how many rows of snow guards will be needed? And can it be accomplished without putting the weatherproof barrier of your roof at risk? The answers to those questions and much more are coming up on today's training. We'll be walking you through an installation of S5 ColorGard with the VersaBracket on an exposed fastened trapezoidal metal roof. Our host for today's training is Dustin Haddock, Vice President of Research and Development at S5, and another member of the R&D team, John Moss. Over to you, Dustin.
Welcome everybody. I appreciate you taking the time today to sit with us and go through this training. I'm Dustin Haddock, Vice President of Research and Development here at S5, where I oversee a lot of the parts that are being designed, the testing, engineering that go into it, that make it an affordable part that you can use for a great many things. Today, we're going to be talking primarily about putting snow retention systems on an exposed fastened metal roof where there's a structure below the roof. Also joining me today is John Moss. John helped me with this install, helped quite a bit.
Hi, I'm John Moss. I also work in research and development. I wear many hats in this organization. I do everything from product design to testing our products to on-roof training and testing and getting out in the field and being hands-on with the S5 product.
At S5, the engineers that are working on staff that are designing the products get hands-on experience installing the products that we design. We do that by nature, so we can identify what a contractor is going to go through as he's actually putting the product on the roof. It's one thing to, test it and look at it behind a computer screen, but getting your hands on the product and seeing how it installs is extremely critical to us, and that's something that we make a habit of doing before we launch any products.
So enough about us, let's get into the video.
This project's out in Black Forest, Colorado. It's a relatively new building. The owner contacted us looking for a snow retention system because his gutters had gone through one season and got completely wiped out. He found us online, researched our system very thoroughly, had a look and said, "Can you help us out with it?" And so we jumped in and said, "Yep, great opportunity. It's close to our headquarters. We can go ahead and help with more of a hands-on approach." He liked the ColorGard system, and so that's the system we went with. Because this was an ag panel, exposed fastened ag panel installed on top of an OSB wooden deck, the VersaBracket 47 was the best choice for the bracket to put the ColorGard on the roof. We have two brackets, the VersaBracket 47 and the VersaBracket 67. The 47 is designed specifically for the lower profile metal roofs, which is why we went with that. Another benefit of using the 47 as opposed to the 67 when the rib height is low enough is you can space those VersaBrackets in such a way that it's quite likely you won't need to utilize a snow clip, which helps keep the cost of the system down. All of our VersaBracket products have a reservoir built within the bracket, and that reservoir is designed to keep the butyl in place. And it's dimensioned such that when you screw the bracket into the substrate, it's not going to completely flatten out and squeeze the sealant out. Another added benefit of that reservoir is it keeps butyl isolated from UV rays. One of the things butyl is going to last 30 plus years, provided it stays out of UV. And the bracket is designed specifically to keep the butyl in place and protect it from UV rays.
So the VersaBracket doesn't attach to sheet, correct? It attaches into the structure of the roof?
Our VersaBracket product lines fix into the structure, and that can be whether you're going straight into 2x4 timber, if you're going into steel, or you're going into OSB, the sheathing. We've tested it in all those various substrates. It goes through the sheet into the substrate, whatever it may be. Fixing it to the sheet only is not something we recommend for snow retention. Yeah.
Could you expect different performance of the VersaBracket when attaching to different substrates or structure?
Yes, absolutely. And that's a great question. And which is why we test it in all the various substrates. You're fixing that product into steel, you're obviously going to have a different pullout value than if you're fixing it into OSB or even plywood. 2x4 timber, again, is another one. The density of the material you're screwing it into, the fastener utilized that the bracket screws into, are all very important to finish out your engineered system. So let's say we test our products with a number 14 Zac screw, metal to wood screw, and you engineer that system based on our testing and engineering, but go out and use a number 12 of some other type of screw, the values are going to be completely different. And so it's absolutely critical that you're utilizing the same screws, the same everything in that assembly as we tested it when you're relying on our published holding strength.
Alrighty, so let's take a look at some of the tools we're going to be using for this installation. We're going to have just a standard screw gun. This is any garden variety screw gun. We're going to be using this screw gun or impact driver to install the Zac screws through the sheeting into the structure, as well as with a 13mm socket on it to tighten the nut and bolt connection on the ColorGard system. We design all of our products and test all of our products to specifically outlast the roof itself. The Zac screw uses a zinc head, so actually the corrosive part of the screw is underneath the roof, and the only thing exposed to the elements is the zinc alloy itself. This means that you're going to see far longer service lives than actually the roof itself. We're going to be using a standard tape measure and a permanent marker. We got our normal Mason string line. These can be had at any home improvement store. Let's get in the install.
The way the system is designed is so that you put the bracket in first. And what we did on this project is we measured out exactly where we wanted that first row of assembly, marked it, and screwed the first bracket into place. That first bracket then acts as a means that you can tie the string line to. We then go to the other side of the building, stretch that string line as tight as we can without breaking the string line, secure it there. Now we have where you see our first row of assembly. But because the distance from rake to rake, or the length of the building, was so long, and there's wind and whatnot that could interfere with that string line, we decided to shorten it up a little bit and put a third bracket right in the middle of the string line so that that first run can be as straight as an arrow.
Dustin, how do you decide how far from the eave to place the ColorGard system?
This is one of those frequently asked questions. Some people think you need to put it right over, your wall, your supporting wall, as opposed to out on the eave. My answer is it depends on how much snow you want to shed from the roof. When anything in front of that system is going to come off the roof, so I always try to keep it 4 to 6 inches from the eave, not from the wall, but from the eave. Sometimes you can have a 2-foot overhang. The building is designed to withstand that overhang and the snow shedding at that eave. So we go 4 to 6 inches from the eave, but again, it's really just how much are you able to let shed from the roof.
Is there a document or an organization that talks about some of these standards and guidelines for installing snow retention on their roofs?
There's some really good resources with the Metal Construction Association, MCA. There's 2 good published documents. The best is Metal Roof Design for Cold Climates. And that document itself will go through everything from how to correctly engineer a system for the snow retention, as well as when it gets into row placements. Like on this project, we had to do 2 rows of assembly. So the next question is where do we put that second row? They actually put some science to it and give you a formula that says, all right, if your first row is here, this is the distance back the second row needs to be. So for this project, we decided to engineer the systems directly into the OSB. You'll see in the photo here that we did have an option to go into the 2x4 timber. But finding that 2x4 timber when you're on top of the roof can be difficult. And so if all of our engineering is based off of that bracket going into 2x4 timber, and we miss and end up just going into OSB, the engineering was for naught. And so to err on the side of caution, we said, all right, we may or may not hit 2x4 timber at some point on this roof, but we're going to engineer it based on just going into the OSB.
So you can see here, there on the ground, we are staging the ColorGard cross members on the ground. A lot of people do prefer to do it this way. It's just less things you have to do on the roof. It's safer. It's All the ColorGard components are made out of a non-corrosive 6000 series aluminum, so they're lightweight, they're strong, they're easy to hand off and pass on to the guy up on the roof.
Once that was pre-assembled and handed up to me on the roof, once you've been doing it for a little bit, the guy on the ground gets a pretty good idea on the spacing the VersaClips need to be, so that when he hands it up to you on the roof, the guy on the roof has minimal work he needs to do to get the VersaClip in the right spot. The VersaBracket has a pre-punched slot in it, so there's no field drilling the brackets itself, so that nut and bolt can go in relatively easily. And there's also a little bit of slop there so that you can move the ColorGard up and down the roof slope to about an inch. When we designed this, one of the thought processes was, okay, we're doing a nut and bolt connection. The nut and bolt that we utilize with this is a serrated flange nut and a serrated flange bolt. A big reason for that is so that you can just put your fingers underneath the system and tighten it down. You don't have to have a backup wrench, which makes it really easy to install because those serrations are going to cut into that aluminum and it'll keep it from trying to spin on you, so you don't need a backup wrench.
So after you install the first lineal of ColorGard, you're going to continue along the row. Each of these sections of the ColorGard system connect with what we call a ColorGard splice. So this splice is also a slip connection, a slip fit connection, just like the VersaClip, and it goes on each end of that, and it allows a small gap for thermal expansion, and it connects the two pieces of ColorGard together, making them into one unit.
The splice is specifically designed so that it marries with the ColorGard in such a way that you're not going to overload the ColorGard system at that joint. So you'll notice that our splice is somewhere around, I think, 6 inches long. The reason for the length of that splice is so that it's not a weak link in the chain of assembly. The splice connection can be pretty critical, especially if you have cantilevered areas more than 12 inches or so. So the splice is going to have the same uniform strength as that cross member when it's spliced together. So as you can see, you'll start to pick up a rhythm, and the system goes up relatively quickly as long as two guys that are working on it, or even a solo guy's working on it, kind of gets into the rhythm of putting the system down.
We're tightening down as we go. The M8, you can see there, I used my finger. I mentioned the serrated bolt earlier. I used my finger there to back up that bolt. Super simple, super fast. Give it a zip with the gun. It's ready to roll.
Every now and again, the joint is going to land at a bracket or near a bracket. Here you can kind of see that happen, where the splice is going to be a length that is going to interfere with the VersaClip, and you're not going to get exactly the holes to line up. When that happens, taking some measurements and doing field cuts is a way to remedy it. The product's designed so that you can cut it, quickly deburr it, and drop a splice right in there.
There's a few different ways to cut the ColorGard system. You can do it certainly, with a hacksaw, a handsaw with a metal blade on it. We usually recommend, what a lot of guys do, is use a sawzall, a reciprocating saw with a metal cutting blade on it. This does require you to deburr a little bit. It's nothing too crazy. As you see here, we cut some of those lineals on the ground as well. We use just a standard dual action miter saw, chop saw, with a specific non-ferrous cutting metal blade. These can be had at any hardware store. This cut is a little bit cleaner. You usually don't have to deburr as much. So if you can plan your cuts on the ground, it may speed things up a little bit.
Right, and when your brackets are, whatever your spacing of the brackets are, something that you can do and should do is figure out what parts are going to need to be cut. And then instead of measuring everyone and cutting it that way, you saw on that earlier slide there that putting some kind of jig in there. We used a little piece of ColorGard at a pre-cut length, clamped it into that saw so that you're just throwing the cross member in there and cutting it the length you need it. Now that we cut the cross member, just put the splice into place and just keep rolling. As we got, barreling down the system, we kind of picked up a flow where John was down on the ground, pre-assembling everything, and I was working up on the roof solo, so that we got into a rhythm where I would have one part already installed just as he's handing me the next. And it just went that way on through, where he didn't have to chase me with the ladder so much anymore or anything like that. He could just send preloaded parts up to me. I'd get them zipped down. By the time he was ready with his next one, we could just go one piece over and over and over again without having two guys, working in the same area.
So Dustin, I noticed on this project we weren't installing a color strip or we weren't installing the S5 snow clip on this project. Could you elaborate why we weren't doing those things?
Yeah, exactly. The color strip is, in case you weren't aware, ColorGard is designed to color match the roof and last the life of the roof system. And what that is that's a small piece, a 2-inch piece of the actual roof material that slides into the ColorGard channel. The homeowner decided on this that he did not want color strip. It was a shop. He was more concerned, not necessarily with aesthetics, as keeping his gutters up and locating the roofer who installed the roof and finding that material was just something he didn't want to have to mess with. When it comes to snow clip, what snow clip does is it snaps on to the ColorGard or slides onto the ColorGard system to keep snow from migrating underneath the system. VersaBracket 47 is a relatively low profile bracket, and so there's not a whole lot of snow that can escape underneath the system. I discussed this with the homeowner, and what he relayed to me was you have snap and screw snow clip, so it's the one that can be retrofitted as opposed to installed, when the system's going up. So should snow migrating under the system become an issue, he would order those other snow clips and install them himself at a later point. Here you see we're installing that second row of assembly. It's the same as the first one. Put the first bracket down, stretch your string line, find a midway point, tie it off good. The big question comes is, well, where do I put the second row of assembly? Most of your snow is going to accumulate nearest to the eave. That technical document from the Metal Construction Association, Metal Roof Design, and Cold Climates kind of gives you a math formula on figuring out exactly where to put it. Here, what you're looking at is what we did is we measured all the way from the eave to the ridge. We cut that number in half, and then we cut it in half again. And that's where we place that second row of assembly.
On this project, of course, Dustin spoke about why we chose the VersaBracket 47 for this project with this specific roof type and the ColorGard system. We have a great tool for this on s-5.com, our website. We have a tool called the clamp to seam tool, and on this tool you can either input the brand style of your roof and the thickness, or you can look through some different diagrams and determine what kind of roof that you have. And this is a great tool for deciding what bracket is right for your application. S5, we don't believe in the one-size-fits-all solution. We design, engineer, and test different products for different applications. Of course, this training, we're talking about exposed-fastened roofs and snow retention systems on that. We do offer products for trapezoidal panels, for ag panels, and also for corrugated panels. So on our website, s-5.com, using that clamp to seam tool, we have a solution for any type of screw-down roof.
Go to our website, you'll find all kinds of useful information. We have a project configurator that's relatively new that'll help you determine, utilizing the correct bracket, what your application is, and then it'll dive into, if it's a snow retention system, our snow retention calculator. That calculator utilizes the same math within the Metal Construction Association's Metal Roof Design for Cold Climates to engineer your snow retention system. And then from that, once that's engineered, it'll give you a bill of materials so you know exactly what parts you need, how many parts you need, and then you can even take it a step further. And that step further is, like I said, we design everything to outlast the roof. We offer a couple of different warranties. One is a lifetime warranty where we can actually come out, inspect the job, make sure that everything was done as we say it is, and give you a warranty that says that that system's going to last the life of the roof. One of the things about using a string line, like I mentioned before, is if the wind's blowing, or let's say you got a bracket slightly off and you move that string line, you really got to be aware of that. There are other ways to do it. There's this modern technology where you can run a laser. It just depends on how involved you're going to get with the project, how big the project is, and utilizing the right tool for that job. This one we used a string line because it wasn't that long of a run. We did have some wind issues, but we were aware of it. And the VersaBracket also accommodates for a little bit of slop if you're slightly off.
Thanks very much to Dustin and John for leading us through today's training. Let's recap some of the information that was discussed. During the design phase of your snow retention project, it's vital that you get the correct bracket and fasteners for your roof so you can reach the necessary holding strength to handle the potential snow loads you'll encounter in your area. All the data you'll need for your designs can be found on our website's load tables under the Resources and Tools tab. Breaking out a string line once you've measured and attached your first couple of brackets is a great way to help keep everything straight, even if there is some unexpected waviness to the panels. And in cases where multiple rows of ColorGard are being installed, be sure to follow the Metal Construction Association's guidelines to calculate the best location to mount them. We want to thank you all for joining us during today's installation. Be sure to subscribe to stay in the know for new ways to expand your metal roofing knowledge. And you can also leave a comment below if there's a certain topic you'd like us to cover. We'll see you next time.